See how you did with this one? Let's go over the solution to it. When you are graphing a parabola in standard form, the first thing that you might want to do is find the axis of symmetry. Do you guys remember that little formula for the axis of symmetry?
X equals negative b over 2a.
Negative b over 2a is correct. So your b value is negative 12. So this would be negative 12 over 2 times negative 3. So this ends up being positive 12 over negative 6, which is negative 2. So did you all get an axis of symmetry of negative 2?
Yeah.
Any questions? All right, so axis of symmetry of negative 2 is right about here. Oops. Something like that. Good? Once you found the axis of symmetry, what is the next thing we should try to find? The vertex, that's right. So what is the relationship between the vertex and the axis of symmetry? Yeah, they're all in the same line, right? So we know then that the vertex is going to share that same coordinate with the axis of symmetry. So it's going to be vertex negative 2 comma something. How do we find the y value to go with that x value? Plug it in, that's right. So you could use a calculator for this. You don't have to, though. You could say y equals negative 3 times negative 2 squared minus 12 times negative 2 minus 8. If you do the arithmetic here, let's see here. Negative 2 squared is 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. Negative 12 times negative 2 is positive 24 minus 8. So when you do the final arithmetic, you end up with 12 minus 8, which is 4. Okay, so your vertex is negative 2 comma 4. And so negative 2 comma 4 is right about there. Okay, so far we've really completed 2 of our 3 tasks. We found the axis of symmetry, we found the vertex, but we got to find 2 other points to get a total of 3. What method, what did you guys use to find the other couple of points? The trick with the y-intercept, the c thing? Yeah. So your c value is negative 8. And so we know, because when x is 0, you get the y-intercept. We know that the c value is always going to be the y-intercept. So negative 8 is way down there, right? Is it the very bottom, right? 2, 4, 6. Yeah, it's way down there. So there's my second point. How do I find my third point?
Mirror it.
Just mirror image across what you know to be the axis of symmetry. So right about there.
How do you do the 2 points if, which one was it, b is 0 or?
Okay, yeah, so we'll talk about that in a second. I think for this one, what we've just done is the best method. I'm going to try that again. There we go. That's somewhat parabola-ish. So let's say that we're talking about Rocky's situation where b is 0. If b is 0, that c value is correct, but it won't be very helpful. Or let's say that you forgot all about the c value trick. What could you do? That's essentially your question, right, Rocky?
Yes.
You can plug in some numbers and do a table of solutions. So here's what I would say. If your axis of symmetry is negative 2, then we could plot a couple of points. I'd want to plot a point on one side of the axis of symmetry and another point on the other side. So if your axis of symmetry is negative 2, I would say that one point to the right would be right about here, wouldn't it? That would be when x is negative 1.
Oh, yeah.
And then I would also want to plot another point to the left of the axis of symmetry.
Negative 3.
Yeah, negative 3. So the convention I would say there is, let's do one to the right, one to the left. But the truth is, if you do one to the right and you do it correctly, couldn't you just mirror image it across? So you really only have to do one to the right or one to the left, whichever you choose, and then just mirror image it across.
Okay, can you show me how to do that?
Sure. So if I erase all of this as best I can, except for my vertex and axis of symmetry, well, got some of the axis of symmetry. Oh well. Just do that. So Rocky, if I was going to do this the slower way, but just as good, it's going to be just as accurate, I would say, let's see, let me erase some of this stuff just so I have room. what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in that point to the right or point to the left. And I guess I would choose the point to the right because negative 1's a little bit smaller, a little easier to handle.
Oh, you just put the number.
Plug it in.
For x. Oh my goodness.
So y equals negative 3 times negative 1 squared minus 12 times negative 1 minus 8. So this would be negative 3 plus 12 minus 8. So that would be 9 minus 8, which is 1. So my point would be negative 1, 1. So Rocky, I would do this. I'd go negative 1, 1 is right here. My vertex was up there, I think. And so then with this point that I just put on there, based on my plugging it into the equation, I would just mirror image that across.
So then it'd be negative 3, 1.
Yep. And if you didn't remember the whole mirror image thing, you could still plug in the negative 3 into the equation and get the negative 3 comma 1. So there's always plotting points as your foundation, right? If you forget all the little tricks, you can always just plot points. It's far from the very best, but it'll work. It'll work. Okay. Great questions. Is there anybody else with a question? Okay. Let me think about what I want to do. I think there's one more. Let's do this. This will be a good way to finish off the basic graphing, and then we'll go back to the one we skipped. So take a look at number 6. Y equals 1/2 x squared minus 5. I think that's the last, yeah, that's the very last one. Y equals 1/2 x squared minus 5. Let's graph it. Let's do the axis of symmetry, the vertex, and 2 other points. With this one right here, we do the same stuff we always do. We find the axis of symmetry first. So the axis of symmetry, as you guys showed, you guys remember this well. It's negative b over 2a. So what is our b value? So really key piece. 0, yeah. So it's negative 0 over 2 times 1/2. But most important thing about that is that 0 divided by 1 is 0. So your axis of symmetry is 0. And so I'll put that on the graph right now. So there it is. Right there. You Hunter, Rocky, you guys with me?
Yeah, I'm trying to see if it works on the calculator.
We can talk about that if you want. But let's focus on this for the moment, Rocky. Let's make sure we're good. So the axis of symmetry is 0. We found that. Rocky, again, just ask for your focus to be up here for just a moment. We can talk about the calculator for sure. Okay, so once you've found the axis of symmetry, the next thing you want to find is the vertex. So with the vertex, we know the relationship between the vertex and the axis of symmetry is that they're on the same line on the graph. And so I know then that my vertex has to be 0 comma something. How is it that I find the y to go with my 0 for x? Plug it in. Not c. Not always. In this case, yes, but that will not always be the case.
Okay.
I want to be really clear about that. That is true here, I agree, but it's not always the case. So I'm going to plug in y equals 1/2 times 0 squared minus 5. So we end up with 0 minus 5, which is negative 5. So, did you guys get a vertex of 0 comma negative 5?
Yes.
Okay, so 2, 4, 5. It's right there. So this is where this takes on a little bit of a different look, because normally, like in what we did before, when we can, we'd say the c is the y-intercept and use that to get our 2 points, 2 other points. But if you look at the c value, it's negative 5, and that's already on the graph, isn't it? We're right back to where we were at the vertex. So while that's true, it's not going to be helpful. So the way we handle this then is to build in that symmetry by starting at the axis of symmetry, which is 0, and widening it out, either going 1 to the right and 1 to the left, or 2 to the right and 2 to the left. These guys had a great idea. They saw that fraction and thought, man, if I use a 1, I'm going to have to deal with the fraction, right? But if I use a 2, maybe I won't. I think that was a wise idea. So we create a little table of solutions here, x and y. So if you do a 2 for x, you'd also want to think about a negative 2 for x, because that's the symmetry around that axis of symmetry. If you plug in a 2, you get y equals 1/2 times 2 squared minus 5. So that would be half of 4 minus 5. So that would be 2 minus 5. Did you guys get negative 3 for that? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So 2 comma negative 3 is right there. There's 2 points. How do I find my third point?
You just mirror it.
Mirror image it across. When x is negative 2, y is negative 3 again because of the symmetry that we know this has. Connect the dots with a parabola-like shape.
It is difficult to try.
Man, that is so lopsided. I'm going to try one more time. Oops. So I'm going to go... That's a little better. There we go. There's my parabola. Again, please try to avoid the triangle-looking parabola, right? Because it's not really a sharp point, it's a smooth curve. But there you go. Any questions? Okay, got one last challenge for you. It's right here.
Is it the word question?
It
We already
is.
did that.
We did not do number 3 yet.
Let's just play along.
I guess we did.
I am 100% for sure we did not do this one, regardless of what you say.
Yeah, we didn't.
They're just being silly, Jake. They're trying to be problem causers.
We're not trying to cause problems. We're trying to get out of problems.
By causing a problem.
No.
Or we could just not do this altogether, and then it could still be on your quiz on Tuesday.
Good idea.
And is that good? No, probably not a good idea. All right, here we go.
Something on the quiz that you did.
A company's yearly profits from 1996 to 2006. So profit is the amount of money you bring home after you consider what you spent to make the money. So anyways, this company's yearly profits can be modeled by the function y equals x squared minus 8x plus 80, where y is profit in thousands of dollars. X is the number of years since 1996. So this function is just describing the profit. The profit's going to be different for a particular year, apparently. So part A says, in what year did the company experience its lowest yearly profit? So here is a couple of things to think about. We'll get there in a second. So what kind of an equation describes the profit of this company?
Y equals x squared minus 8x plus 80.
What kind of equation is that, though?
Quadratic.
It's a quadratic. So let's think for a second. We've done a lot of graphing of quadratics. What does the graph of a quadratic look like? It's a parabola, yeah. So with a parabola, we've seen a couple of different scenarios here with a parabola. Some of the parabolas that we have done have opened up, and some of the parabolas we've looked at open down. So looking at this particular
Opens up.
quadratic, is it going to open up or down? How do you know it's going to open up?
The vortex is the lowest.
Because A is positive. We'll get there in a second. A is positive, so it's going to open up. So this parabola will look something like this. So, with a parabola that opens up, what is likely going to be your lowest point? What do we call that?
Vertex.
The vertex. Yeah. So that's where Rocky was going with this right away, right, Rocky?
Yeah.
Yeah. So with a parabola that opens up, the vertex would be the lowest point. So, when it asks us during what year did the company have its lowest profit, this is another way of saying, let's find where the vertex is. Okay? So, how do we find the vertex? Yeah, we're going to use that first. So we're going to say x equals negative b over 2a. In this case, what is the b? The b is negative 8. So it would be negative 8 over 2a. And what's the a value? 1. All right, so this would be 8 over 2. X equals 4. Okay, so we are told that x equals, or x is the number of years since 1996. And we just found out that the vertex happens when x is 4. So during what year did they have their lowest profits?
64.
64.
No.
2000.
2000. So this
Oh, I get it.
this says that x is the number of years since 1996, and since x is 4, wouldn't that mean that the year 2000, 4 years later, right?
Wait, did you say 2004?
No, 2000.
Well, that makes perfect sense.
Good. So 1996 is when x is basically 0. So 4 years later, it would be the year 2000. So the year when they had their lowest profits would be the year 2000. Then part B says, okay, we know that this happened in 2000. It says, what was the lowest profit? What was that lowest yearly profit? What are they asking for now?
$64,000.
In regard to the quadratic equation, what are they asking for?
Money,
Yeah.
thousands of dollars.
Yeah, money in thousands of dollars. Yes, I agree. But what about the quadratic?
You want to solve for y.
They want the y value, right? So x represents the number of years. So x is the when, right? Y is the how much. X stands for, it goes with the year, but y goes with how much money they actually got. So we're going to try to find the y coordinate to answer B. So what was the lowest yearly profit? I would say y equals 4 squared minus 8 times 4 plus 80. And let's say 16 minus 32. Yeah, so I agree with Hunter on this one. 64. And we were told that it was in thousands of dollars. So we'd say $64,000. So this is a really key piece right here. This is kind of subtle, but I want you to stop and think about this. This was definitely talking about the vertex, but it's important for us to understand what stands for what. So X stood for time, and Y stood for money. And so when it says during what year did they have their lowest profit, that's going to be associated with the X. When they ask for how much money they actually had that year, that's associated with the Y. So we want to understand what actually stands for what, as opposed to just, I got a vertex, and not necessarily know what it means for an application like this. So finding a minimum or perhaps a maximum, right? Because if the parabola tipped over and it opened down, wouldn't you be finding a max as opposed to a minimum? So it could go the other way as well. Something to think about. All right. You guys are a little on the edge today. You're going to need to tone it down a little bit moving forward. I don't care if it's Monday or Friday. All right. So we're going to finish our morning here at the board. So if you guys would head to the board, let's do a little bit of work together, see how you're doing, start to get ready for our quiz on Tuesday.